Columbian is pleased to welcome candidate for Clark County Council from District 4. We have Adrian Cortes joining us, and I should mention Gary Medvigy had agreed to meet with us. We haven't heard from him. Hopefully he'll join us later, but for now, you have our undivided attention.
All right.
Well,
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm glad you can make it. I'm Greg Jane, editorial page editor. I believe you met the other editorial board members. Just so you know, reporter Jake Thomas is sitting in on this. He won't be asking questions here. He might want to speak with you later. And we are videotaping this. We post all of our interviews unedited on our website for the benefit of our readers. And with that, we'll get started. Why don't you just take a minute or two to introduce yourself, explain why you are running for this position, and then we'll move on to specific policy questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Again, thank you for inviting me to this. It's a pleasure to be able to run for this office. It's a pleasure to be able to run against my opponent. You know, I respect my opponent. He has a long history of service in uniform, and I respect him for that, and I appreciate that. A little bit about me. I grew up in the Clark County area since age 5. Graduated from the Battleground School District, particularly Prairie High School, so I'm a Falcon. I have 2 daughters right now, ages 14 and 8, and they are both the jewel of my eye, taking all my extra time. I've been married to my wife for 16 years. What I do for my professional life, I'm a full-time public educator, so I'm a special education teacher. I teach for Camas High School. And then additionally, I'm also an associate professor. I teach for City University of Seattle. I teach individuals that are looking to become aspiring teachers, and so I do that as well. On my civic life, I'm serving my 2nd term on the Battleground City Council. Prior to that, I served for 4 years as the chairman of the Planning Commission out in Battleground. I also was elected earlier this year by my peers on the CTRAN Board of Directors as the chairman for the CTRAN Board of Directors. And then I also serve on some various other boards like the Clark County Developmental Disabilities Advisory Board, and then I've served on the WSU Vancouver Strategic Planning Committee several years ago. So I'm very heavily invested in my community. I've lived here, like I said, for quite some time. And basically, in a nutshell, why I'm running for Clark County Council is simple, and that's just to help improve the lives of those that I serve. And these are the same people that I grew up with and went to school with and had dinner with, and so just looking to bring my local experience to the County Council.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, thanks for joining us. One of the big questions facing the county, or several of the big questions, revolve around the jail. What are we going to do? Replace it, renovate it, and what is the price tag going to be? How would you approach that? How do you think the council should approach that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important topic, no doubt. I was a bit disappointed when I saw the outcome of the subcommittee's work, in which one of the options basically had the price tag of around $400 million after you factor in finance, bonding costs and the like. You're sitting at about a $500 million jail, and you're probably sitting at about anywhere between $60 to $70 million a year just to operate the jail, which is far greater than what the operational costs are right now. I think while I do have to respect the fact that there are professionals that work at the jail that this is what they do for a living in terms of how they manage jail. So I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in that. However, I do think that we can do it for a lot less. And what that looks like is remodeling the jail and bringing it up to 21st century standards when it comes to jailing. You could probably do that for a fraction of the cost, anywhere between $70 to $80 million on remodeling it. And then putting more of an emphasis on our specialty courts. So that includes our drug felony court, our veterans court, our juvenile court, our mental health court. We just had a report by the Superior Court that came out, 2017-2018 report that said for every dollar that is spent on our specialty courts, it saves about $27 in terms of taxpayer money. And just in the adult felony court alone, believe it has an excess of 80% don't recommit a felony. And so they're very, very effective. They still keep the community safe. I think we should place more emphasis on our specialty courts while still approaching the jail. And
did the task force include information or an estimate on a remodel rather than a rebuild? What were their conclusions on that?
That I read, I mean, they gave three options, and one was a do nothing option, and then there was two other options. The option that I just mentioned right now was probably the most expensive option. There was another option that was a little bit less, but still very expensive, in the couple $100 million range. I don't believe specifically, I could be wrong, but I don't believe specifically they talked about just a renovation option. I think it needs to be looked at more significantly. Renovating the jail and bringing it up to 21st century jailing standards. So.
And where did you get your price estimate on that?
So some of the price estimate that I got on that were some of the previous discussions we've had in the past 10 years when it comes to, because this is not the first conversations we've had when it comes to what do we do with our jail, right? And so I've got, you piece together some of the numbers that have been thrown out in the past, you put a little average in there. Again, I'm not a professional when it comes to how we run and manage our jails, but I think it's more reasonable than not to think that there's a solution, a more balanced solution, rather than spending $500 million and gobbling up prime commercial real estate in downtown Vancouver.
See, and regarding the financing, where does the county budget stand right now? How can it be strengthened?
So right now the county budget, they're on an annual budget just like the city of Battleground. So they switched over, about a year or two ago in terms of, instead of doing a biennium budget. Their budget right now is a little over $500 million in terms of their total operational budget. In terms of where they are right now and how can they pay for a new jail, well, they definitely can't pay for a new jail with the existing revenue sources they have right now. So any new jail would have to go out for a public vote to approve the bonds. And quite frankly, and just talking to some of the people that when I'm out there campaigning, I don't see a lot. I mean, these people, they support law enforcement, they support safer communities, but I don't see them supporting a $500 million bond and increasing their property taxes.
And I noticed on your campaign materials, you really stress you will not raise property taxes. First of all, does that mean you would never support the annual 1% levy increase?
As long as I'm elected to, if I'm fortunate enough where the voters trust me and they vote for me to be elected to the county council, I'm not going to support a 1% property tax increase because there's a series of benchmarks that I believe, in my opinion, the county has not met and needs to meet before there's any discussion of supporting any revenue enhancements.
And what are some of those?
Well, first and foremost, the community development department, the department that's responsible for permits, I still think is lacking. One of my neighbors was just talking to me and said, hey, I'm building a house out in Battleground Lake, and it's taken me over a month just to get permits on my house. Why is that? And that's just not isolated to that one individual. When I'm speaking to the development community, they're of the same mindset. Why is it taking so long for us to get permits? So
do you think having less money available to the county would improve the efficiency of that department, or are you thinking you would just charge more for permits and use that to improve the department?
Well, I think the mindset that I would be looking at it is we need to create efficiencies when it comes to how we're servicing citizens before we talk about revenue enhancements. Because if we're not doing it right now, what's to think that if we take more revenue, it's going to be any better?
Why do you think? Why aren't they doing it right?
It is interesting because I've heard
bad employees, bad management.
I've heard the argument. My retort has always been, well, for example, in the city of Battleground, you can get a housing permit within 4 to 5 business days. Same thing in most other jurisdictions, whether it's Camas, Washougal, the like. And when I talk to people about the county, and I've talked to some employees at the county, and they say, well, we just run it's a bigger jurisdiction, and so there's a lot more there. And I say, okay, I understand it's a bigger jurisdiction, but when you have technology and you have accountability, you should be able to process it roughly within the same amount of time, give or take a couple of days, not weeks on weeks. even Gary, my opponent, he's admitted that there's an issue down there, and they're working on it. So while it's great that they're working on it, it's another thing that they haven't fixed. There's been so many years of not fixing it.
So is that the employees, or is it the management, is it the city council?
In my opinion, it is about accountability. So another example in our city, we put a lot of accountability when it comes to our city manager in terms of her evaluation. One of those things is how her departments perform. I don't think there's enough accountability in terms of the county administrator. So getting the community development department to run efficiently needs to be directly tied to the performance evaluation of the county administrator. If he's not performing, if that department's not doing well, there needs to be consequences.
So Mr. Hennessy should face consequences for underperforming in the community development department. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the buck stops with him.
Okay.
And yet, if and I don't know this for a fact, but if it's poor performance of employees, that's his responsibility to fix. If it's not enough resource in that department, that's his responsibility to fix. So you can't say, well, this department's, I've tried and this department's not working. Well, no, that's your job.
Well, when you say not enough resources, doesn't that mean more money for the department?
Well, when I say not enough resource, I mean, it could, but it could also mean, technology. What are they working with? What is their process? What is their workflow? I don't know the answer to that. So, I mean, why are other municipalities able to do better than they are when it's really the same, for the most part, the same function?
And until the county improves in that area and others, then you would not support the yearly permissible 1%.
That's correct. And
then how do you keep up with inflation for services?
Well, again, at the city level, I can tell you what we do at the city level. For example, at the city level, we're very competitive. We have 3 legs of revenue that we bring revenue, and that's property tax, sales tax, and utility tax revenue. And so we're not overly reliant on any one particular revenue source. I think the county needs to be able to diversify its revenue sources and make sure that it's not just overly reliant on the 1%.
Are there other areas where you feel Mr. Hennessy is underperforming or not performing his job adequately?
Well, one of the big things I've been touting in this campaign is I believe that the county needs to have a visioning initiative. Similar to the vision that was held back many, many years ago when Ann Hendrickson was the mayor of Camas, and now look at how Camas is flourishing. Similar to the vision initiative that our city just did not too long ago, and now we're moving forward and we're taking that vision and we're having it inform our land use planning, capital facilities planning, transportation planning, parks and the like, and we are moving forward on actions that will put us in a good place to benefit like Camas did. The county has never done that. Now my opponent says, well, that's what a comprehensive plan update is for, and I very much disagree with that. I think we need to do a better job at determining what our citizens want, and then after we do that, that informs our land use planning, that informs our capital facilities planning. Then when it comes to our comp plan update, we set goals and objectives on how do we meet that. So again, that whole process that I just explained to you right there, that's the responsibility of the county administrator to provide leadership on that. Right now, that leadership's not there. It's shooting in the dark when it comes to economic development. What's the next biggest residential development we could drop in the middle of an old farmland? Or where can we get the best short-term gain on a new apartment complex? That's not what we need. And yeah, the buck stops with the county administrator. Yes, there's responsibility to be shared when it comes to the county council, but the county administrator is there to provide leadership.
We'll move on to is the county effectively dealing with homelessness? What else can or should they do?
In my opinion, the county, every jurisdiction is going to deal with homelessness different. And for me personally, I don't like to refer to homelessness as a lot of times you hear a lot of people say, you know, the homeless people, or the homeless population, and it's more like an umbrella. And it's really not an umbrella when it comes to homelessness. There are different silos within that umbrella of people that find themselves homeless, whether it's homeless because of they're economically disadvantaged, they were just one paycheck away from becoming homeless at no fault of their own, or whether they're homeless because they have some form of chemical dependency, or whether they're homeless because they have some mental health issues. So I think we need to, every community is going to tackle it differently, and I would hope that they tackle it based upon the individual that is homeless, not the overall umbrella of just general homeless people. I think it's the county's role to support whatever action that each municipality takes on handling individuals that find themselves homeless. You know, all you have to do is look across the river to Portland. Obviously, they have a unique way of handling homelessness. You may or may not agree with the way that they do it. On this side of the river, different municipalities, whether it's Vancouver, Camas, Ridgefield, Battleground, the like, they will handle it differently, and I think the county needs to be in a supportive role to do that.
Would it be more effective if those different cities and the county got involved to kind of coordinate?
I think it would, and I think that's part of being, you know, supporting the municipalities and what their approach is going to be.
Do you think Portland's solution is working?
I think all you have to do is go down to Portland and walk downtown in Portland, and you can see that it's definitely not working.
Yeah.
So
They have a program though. I've heard a little bit about it.
they do. I would, you know, I don't want to sound critical of them because they obviously have their own challenges, but definitely just looking at it from on the surface, it appears as if it's not working.
How about collaboration with the city? I mean, they're dealing with this center, what's it called, the intake center?
Oh, yes.
Navigation.
Yeah.
Navigation
Center, yeah.
Or I call it Fred Meyer.
I remember, I used to, my mother and I used to go in there when it was Fort Myers, so yeah.
But is there, do you guys work with the city at all? It's kind of a joint problem, isn't it?
Are you talking about like the city of Battleground, or?
No, well, city of Vancouver actually.
Yeah, so,
'Cause
yeah.
County solutions.
Yeah. So in terms of, if I was on a county council, I mean, definitely that would be one avenue of supporting the city of Vancouver,
Mhm.
right? Is that going to be the same approach to the city of Camas or the city of Battleground? No, it's
Yeah.
not. I mean, they're going to have a different solution on how they meet homelessness. And so, but the county needs to be supportive, needs to take a leadership role in that, right? And saying, okay, bring everybody to the table. How are we going to tackle homelessness in the county, while representing that, or recognizing that every municipality is going to handle it slightly different.
Do you have a city solution in the city of Battleground?
I know our mayor is working on an initiative with a nonprofit group that's called Just One Thing. And it's a group of individuals that are volunteering their time to tackle homelessness in a very unique solution. And so, yes, it is. We're just at the very beginnings of that process.
What about where do you stand on the 179th Street interchange and development up there? Is the county taking the right approach to that, or would you do it differently?
Yeah. So again, I'll reiterate, I think we needed and still need a visioning initiative prior to tackling that project.
And let me go back to that just for a sec. So does that involve community groups or a vote of the county? How do you define the priorities that are important to citizens?
So again, a visioning initiative, it's to determine on a county level. It would include all the county, right? Now we can talk details as to how that unrolls in terms of do we break it up into the different districts, because District 4 residents are going to have different values and different priorities than District 3 and so on and so forth. Right?
But you somehow put it on the ballot, or just hold public meetings? Or?
No, it wouldn't be on the ballot. So what it would be, you would appoint a group of stakeholders. They would be charged with going out into the community and gaining community input on a series of things that we need input on to put a vision out there. So.
Sure. And I'm sorry, go ahead on 179.
Yeah. So on the 179th, again, we need a visioning initiative, and that's a prime example of why we need a visioning initiative. You know, when many years ago, when I was on the planning commission, that whole area was all part of the, and it still is, but the whole area was tasked as being part of the Discovery Corridor. And it was envisioned that the emphasis would be placed on attracting employers, family wage jobs. And right now, what the county has done is it has basically turned it into one giant residential development. And my opponent has said that he thinks it's a great project because it's going to bring a lot of economic development, and I disagree with him. And the reason why I disagree with him, I was sitting down and talking just with the home builders, for example. They agree with my position in terms of when you have a project that was slated to primarily focus on employment, now it's more primarily focused on residential, and then on top of that, you raid the road fund, which people in Hawkinson and Brush Prairie that want their roads repaired and maintained, they're now going to be paying to subsidize growth on 179th. And then you throw on top of that again that the impact fees on that area are going to be the second to third highest impact fees in the state, not the county. They're going to be the highest in the county, but they're going to be the second or third highest in the entire state. That's going to stymie growth. And so, again, there's nothing conservative about voting for and supporting the second to third highest impact fees in the state of Washington. And so I think it's the wrong development. I don't think we should be subsidizing growth. I am for growth, but it has to be balanced. It has to be a balanced approach.
And then if that's primarily residential, it puts more stress on the I-5 bridge. How should we approach that?
Well, in terms of the I-5 bridge, I fully support rebuilding the I-5 bridge.
Would you do that first before an additional span?
Yes. The I-5 bridge needs to be replaced first and foremost. We can start talking about second and third crossings. I don't mind talking about that. We can even talk about, creating a network of ferry systems, just like up in the Puget Sound. And that's fine to talk about too. I have no problem with that. But first and foremost, we need to replace that I-5 bridge. It needed to be replaced 10, 20 years ago. Kind of a spin solution that I've been putting out there that I haven't heard anybody really say or support is when we rebuild that I-5 bridge, and it will get rebuilt, we need to have a dedicated multimodal lane that has just bus rapid transit and freight mobility to just service those two modes. You may ask, why bus rapid transit? Well, as chair of the CTRAN Board of Directors, we're heavily invested in bus rapid transit. We have bus rapid transit along 4th Plain. We just got FTA approval to put bus rapid transit along the Mill Plain corridor. And we have also plans to put bus rapid transit all up to the Hazeldale area. And so we're heavily invested in bus rapid transit. And so I think it is a perfect fit to go across that bridge. Now, I may have the Oregon governor and Washington governor that may disagree with me on that, and that's perfectly fine. But I think we can definitely come to some form of compromise where we create a new bridge that may have the infrastructure for light rail to turn on in the next 10 to 20 years. But for here now, the short term, we need to have it serviced by bus rapid transit because that's the preferred transit component that we have for CTRAN. And I think it's the most cost effective right here and now.
So you're running as a Democrat for Eileen Quiring's old seat,
Yes.
probably the most conservative member of the county council. How does that inform your campaign, and what do you do to kind of be a Democrat in a very conservative district?
Yes, well, growing up, I grew up in a conservative household, and so I remember watching Ronald Reagan on TV, and many of the values that I grew up with are still what one would classify as conservative values, right? So I guess you could call me, if you want to put a label on me, which I hate labels, but if you want to put a label on me, you can call me a conservative, a Ronald Reagan Democrat. So I believe the county council seat should be a nonpartisan seat. I believe it shouldn't be a partisan seat. There's nothing partisan when we're talking about sewer and repairing potholes and fixing streets. It's all about common sense and making good judgment on that. In terms of, what does that make me? I mean, I once was a Republican and now I'm a Democrat. And you know what? Yeah, my opponent criticized me for that, and I get it. That's fair criticism. Ronald Reagan switched parties too, and so everybody thinks he's a fine president or was a fine president, and so there's nothing wrong with that.
You mentioned a relationship between the city and the county, and county maybe being in a supportive role. Overall, how would you assess the relationship between Vancouver and the county government?
Well, I knew at one point, I remember when I served on the Vancouver Clark's Parks Commission as a parks commissioner, and at the time, they had a wonderful working relationship. And then we had a couple politicians that were elected to the county office, and things got really wild and bumpy. And the relationship really soured on many, many different levels between the county and the city of Vancouver. Right now, in terms of how are those relationships, I think the relationships are are professional, but I don't think they're personal yet in terms of positive personal. And I think one of the most important things when you serve as an elected official, it's all about building good relationships with individuals and building trust. So I think there's more work that needs to be done between the county and the city of Vancouver, and I say the city of Vancouver because it is the biggest city in our county. There needs to be more relationships built and more trust built. That's not to say that it's not there right now, because I don't know every single relationship between the county and the city of Vancouver, but I think we need to continue to aspire to build those.
No, I think that
Okay.
was my
Great. Then tell you what, give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and we typically ask if you want to mention any endorsements.
Okay. Yes, so again, I'm running for county council, Adrian Cortes. You can find more information about me at Cortes for Council, that's number 4, council.com. Again, I grew up in this area since I was 5 years old. I've lived here just about all my life. I believe, my opponent has a stellar resume in terms of his accomplishments and the jobs he's held. Those jobs that he's held and that resume that he built was built elsewhere. It wasn't built in Clark County. I believe I have the right skills and the right local leadership to bring to the Clark County Council. I believe that the citizens want a voice that has known where we've been, where we are, and where we need to go on the County Council. Some of the people that have seen my vision and have supported me and endorsed me have been the likes of former Mayor of Camas, Nan Hendrickson, former Clark County Treasurer Doug Lasher, current Battleground City Mayor Mike D'Alessandro, and many, many, many other individuals that I have either grown up with or that I have created relationships throughout my life. So,
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.